I think you could convey the emotions that we're talking about, but still sing in a way where I want to listen to it.
But I meant to ask you that, so I guess I have your answer now, but I don't think he can really sing. Like, good afternoon, beautiful people. This is another episode of Album Mode. We review a new album every single week. We look at the lyrics, the production, the overall aesthetic of the album, and how the album fits into the context of that artist's career. For everyone watching on YouTube, make sure you like this video, subscribe to us, and leave us a comment. Let us know how wrong we always are. My name is Adriel Smiley, a.k.a. AdrielSmiley.com, a.k.a. Adriel Smiley Official, a.k.a. The Godfather. We're here with His Royal Highness, a.k.a. Green Goblin, a.k.a. Not a Munch, a.k.a. the Bunny, King Grant.
Welcome back, everybody. It's Album Mode. Allegedly, I wear a lot of green. This has been brought to my attention, but yeah, we're back. This time it's with the influential Young Lean and Jonatan, his latest album. Young Lean, a rapper out of Sweden. If you're not as well acquainted with Young Lean, I would explain to you that Young Lean is somebody that in the early 2010s, with his cloud rap style, this is around Lil B.
That's the name that I think of. When I think of Young Lean, I think of Lil B.
Yeah.
You're more Lil B than A$AP Rocky.
Yeah,
continue.
This was during this only phase, because it was really just at this point in the early 2010s, cloud rap. He was one of the influencers. He was one of the people where it's like, this is cool, this is why it's cool. And it was this white guy in Northern Europe making music that was kind of cool and a little bit alien at the time. And he has maintained a sticking point in hip-hop for us hip-hop fans, because to be influential at such an early period of when we're talking about like mixtape era, and to maintain some sort of musical output, he never went away, is like important to us. So we're still following Young Lean and figuring out what the hell this guy is doing. At that time, he was like 26, or sorry, he was like 16, sorry. And now he's like 28, right? So we've gotten to a point where this guy is maturing to whatever he wants to be as a full-fledged artist. And this is where we are. Jonatan, I believe, is his actual first name.
Yep, that's correct.
I believe it to be so. And we're here with his album. How did you feel when we were even considering to review this? Like, this is something that I would say wasn't something that was, we have like a calendar, right? I wouldn't say it was on there with a bullet, but it was on there.
Yeah, he's one of those artists who I'm aware of, but have not really listened to. And even in his early days, I was a fan of some of his songs. Of course, the Ginseng Strip 2002 was probably the real big one that a lot of people remember, if you were, old enough to remember that time. And then Oreo Milkshake as well. But he's one of those artists who I have this is my first full album listening to Young Lean. I have never listened to a Young Lean album in full. And you brought up Lil B. That's someone who I think of from this era that he's from, where it always felt like kind of the left of hip hop. He never made it into kind of the mainstream. He became one of the kings of the underground when cloud rap was really bubbling up, but never kind of made it to the mainstream. But when you talk about the influence, I always think about it in terms of the features that he's done. He's one of those artists where other artists definitely know who he is. He's on Huncho Jack with Travis Scott and Quavo. He's on Travis Scott's last album as well. And then his collaborators back in those days, Bones, Denzel Curry, Tyboy Digital. So again, I think a lot of the masses may not be aware of who he is in terms of his actual music. He's like a name that you see sometimes, but other artists are definitely aware of who he is.
Yeah, so that's, I would say, the primer on Young Lean. And you're right, the Ginseng Strip, it came out in 2013. So this is actually post or mid A$AP Rocky. Yeah, I think it's just really interesting because like cloud rap at that time sounds very different from what this album sounds like.
Yeah.
So when it comes to Jonatan, I think that he is, before, I think at the beginning, It was very, I don't want to say stereotypical, but it was kind of like stereotypical rap tropes, right? But in this packaging of a European, again, Northern Europe. This guy's from Sweden. So it's the packaging is very, very odd compared to what we were used to. Now he has ventured more into, I want to say, indie rock, a little bit of like country western, a little bit on a couple of songs. And when it comes to like the lyrics, that's where I was immediately skeptical of what we were what we were approaching. Do you have a specific song do you want to point out, or do you want me to start? Because go ahead.
I have two things before we get into lyrics, because I think this is how I'm even shaping what we're even getting into. On the one, you talk about the packaging of just him as an artist making that cloud rap. This is really the ascension of the white rapper, was cloud rap. Like, if you think about the modern white rapper who's not quote unquote lyrical, there was a time when the white rappers were lyrical. Eminem, Beastie Boys, even Yellow Wolf.
Macklemore to a degree.
Macklemore even. This is the era of the kind of swaggy, trap, playful white rapper. And he was at the forefront of it. Much of the people we're naming are from that era. So I think coming from that to this is huge. And then again, I've never listened to a Young Lean album in full. So this sound that he has here, I'm like, is this what it's been for years and I'm just unaware? I'm assuming that's not the case, but this is just for me coming in as a new listener was pretty interesting. And then one more thing, he said this in an interview, which really, really struck out to me. He said 2 of his musical influences were Gucci Mane and Bruce Springsteen. And
what a range.
What an absolute range. 2 absolute legends in their own right,
Yeah.
But I think that is kind of a great place to frame where he's at now when you talk about lyrics. And I want to start with Teenage Symphonies for God, God Will Only, because a lot of his actual lyrics and the phrases he uses are kind of not as hip hop as they used to be. Like even the songwriting isn't hip hop as much anymore. There are some themes that feel more kind of 2010s hip hop ish in terms of what he's talking about, but the way he's actually writing isn't hip hop ish, and I think that's very unique for someone in his position who's kind of changing genres. Because we talked about Lil Yachty's album, many months back. You could feel the hip hop in his songwriting in a lot of those songs.
Yeah.
Even though the actual production was not hip hop. When we did the Shabuzi review, it was very much country with modern country, but there's a lot of phrases in there. They're like, these are some hip hop phrasing, some hip hop, kind of literary devices in a sense. So there's not really any of that on this. And I thought that was very, very interesting. I did not see that coming at all. On verse 2, Teenage Symphonies for God, he says, when you get what you want, is it really what you want? Is it still what you dreamed of or something that would haunt? I write symphonies for us, teenage symphonies for God, teenage crimes have been lost, and I really had it all. Sometimes I shut the world off. Sometimes it all feels too much of a job. I know we all get lost. Maybe it's too much. Maybe I just had too much of it all. This is a theme that we've heard a bunch of artists talk about, and why I highlight this, because when I heard this right away, I said, this is like, it's real to him, of course, but we heard similar themes from Lady Gaga a few months ago. Him, Lady Gaga, 2 complete different levels. But I think that's pretty cool that he can kind of still feel that way of, I've been famous for a decade here. Like,
yeah, that's true.
He's talking about Teenage Symphonies, like, yeah, he was popping as a teenager. It's like, when you think about some of the young people who are in the spotlight who may be doing things that are unsavory, I always think about think about things I was doing when I was 19 when no one was watching. Imagine I had, the camera on me, millions of dollars, I would have been a menace. So I completely understand. And there's 2 lines in here that stand out to me. He says, sometimes I shut the world off. I don't know how that's possible, in the literal sense. But I think, in 2025, I'm taking that as you shut your phone off.
Yeah.
Leave social media, try not to go outside, which I think is, he came up in the 2010s, but these are some of the things that we've mentioned before of when an artist is one showing their age, but when we hear this song, 30 years from now, it lets you know the time the song was made, because, a song from the 90s, shutting the world off, it takes a whole different kind of connotation, not the internet. in the same way. And then he says, sometimes it all feels too much of a job. And I said, yeah, he's been at the same company technically for 10 years in a sense. And at this point, it really is a job. So I think him highlighting that is pretty interesting. And I think as well, like, there's a part of this where it's not as far as woe is me, I'm a celebrity. Like, I think that can get kind of tiring when artists have that tone to it. Your boy The Weeknd has had a bit of that in his music. But it's kind of the line of, you know, just being an adult is rough sometimes, you know? And that is more what this feels like than woe is me, I'm a celebrity. It's like, you know, these more feel like just things you feel in your late 20s. So I think that's kind of where he is lyrically on this song, at least, where it feels more relatable because it's not the idea of, I'm so rich and famous, it's horrible. Yeah. It's, man, I'm growing up and it's not easy.
Yeah, I think that he is definitely got this like disillusioned feeling with like life. I think that is the most prevalent like feeling. Just like emotionally, that's just how it feels.
Yeah.
Whether or not it comes with the production, the way he sings, the lyrics, it's just like this detachment, disillusion, apathy, a little bit. And I think that it works for a lot of the songs. I think that level of emotionality is coming through. I think when you look at some of the lyrics, I like the lyrics that you mentioned. I would consider that good, right? But there are sequences where you're seeing like, you know, the references that he was even bringing up with like Bruce Springsteen and Gucci Mane. When I listen to Might Not Be, that is where the references are smashing together and it's not working. Okay. I think that this is on verse 1 where he goes, might not be such a bad idea if I never called you. If I never called you again, because it might not be such a bad idea if I just stay. If I just stay right here, like the pearly teardrops fall. Every year a few drops fall. It's not too early to make that call. Take the darkness out your heart. Let it go back to the start. Because there ain't no beginning. There ain't no start. There ain't no darkness without stars. Ain't no sunshine when she's gone. Okay. So the top, I mean, to cap or to bookend that verse is, might not be such a bad idea if I never called you again. That's Jill Scott, right? Obviously. We all know this.
Yes.
Home is where the heart is, hopefully for all of us. And then at the end is Ain't No Sunshine When She's Gone, Bill Withers, right? But the melody in both of those songs are just much more lush and much more filled with life, genuinely.
Yes.
It is genuinely. I'm not saying it like to detract from what he's doing. It's like those songs are just filled with much more life. And when we're mixing that vibrancy with the disillusion and the apathy, it makes them feel really drab. Like it really weighs down those lines in a way where it's like, it feels the emotion, like I can understand somebody who feels apathetic or feels disillusioned or feels sad. We did Zach Bryan, we reviewed Zach Bryan, and there was a lot of that there that I loved. But this is like it got to the point of drab, like it was like gray, like, you know. And I think that's like one of his issues. One of the main issues is like it can become so apathetic and so sad that it grays out everything.
It drags on you. Like, this was an album that was hard for me to listen as many times as I like to listen to an album for this podcast because it was just grating on me. And it's like, the sun is out, man. Like, this is not the vibe right now, you know? And in a way, he's doing a good job of what he's going for, if that's what he's going for, because some of these songs do feel really, really sad. Like, and again, it's not even in the sad of like bawling your eyes out. It's just like almost like a hopelessness. Yeah, like you're lying on the grass and you're just like, this is it. I'm done. Yeah. You know? it's like, what's the point of anything? That's the energy that it's giving. So I agree with you. And I think there's a few times on this album where that's the case, where I think that almost hurts the album as a full project.
Yeah, because also his singing is lifeless.
Yeah.
It's lifeless. And again, I think you could convey the emotions that we're talking about, but still sing in a way where I want to listen to it.
But I meant to ask you that, so I guess I have your answer now, but I don't think he can really sing. Like, it really reminded me of a person who we cannot name with the sing talking. And it's like, I think the sing talking, I've always thought, is such a great vehicle for rappers to use in terms of using melodies, especially in the early 2010s, again, the era he came up in, when a lot of these rappers were doing their own hooks in the mixtape era. It's like, I can't afford 6 features. I'm doing my own hooks. And it was kind of like a savior for rappers that couldn't really sing. But I realize now that the more you can actually sing is the more that helps when you are doing the sing talking. Because you're right, his voice in some of these really, really brings down the record. So I think there's like those two together, it's like, I think that may work for someone. So I want to give him the credit in like, there is some person out there who actually feels like this, who this is what they want to hear.
Yeah, I think I was thinking about that too. And I'm like, where's this coming from? Right? Because he's obviously attempting, you know, he's been working in music for over 10 years. Yeah. He's attempting to do something. You know, it's not just like, you know, he's not as he showed up in the booth and like, everything kind of sucks and I hate it here. No, like he actually is trying to do something. And I'm like, maybe he's trying to like emulate like grunge or something, like the way that they're singing grunge, where it's like that, or like trying to think of like Pavement or some shit. You know what I mean? Like I'm trying to figure out where this guy's coming from.
He's not even really vocalizing to that level,
right?
So I think you're right in your assessment personally, but he's not vocalizing to that level, and I think that's like the difference here is that vocally doesn't have the chops for some of these records.
Yeah,
and and to be honest, I think as a songwriter, he may be onto something with some of these where, you know, give these to somebody else. These might be, you know, for someone else to sing.
Yeah, because, you know what, I'm going to be honest with you. There was a song where I was at, this is actually in Teenage Symphonies. I just felt like this feels like an audition for Brockhampton.
Wow.
This feels like he is trying to, just like from the production, like the style of the production felt like a Saturation 1, Saturation 2, that wah, 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 in the background and the guitar, you know, it's very indie rock. And that felt like a Bareface song.
Okay, I can see that.
Right? It feels like he's trying, maybe I should explain that further. It feels like he's trying to do the Bareface ending song of the Brockhampton albums.
Yes.
And, but it's not like Bareface can sing. Like Bareface can really fucking sing. And I think that the difference is literally the ability to sing.
Yeah, that's the first thing I said. I was like, he not good enough to make it to Brockhampton with this singer. Like they're not letting him in with that. So I see what you're saying of where he's trying to go with it. Yeah. But again, not probably enough to actually get in the mix. Yeah. I want to talk about his voice a little bit more before we get into production.
Okay.
I think there's two things that I saw that he actually did well. I think he has a use of harmonies that actually works well, but his voice is kind of the worst part of it.
Yes, I agree.
And so it's like, I kind of see the musical ability all over this project. And you talked about him being in music for 10 years. It's like, he clearly knows what he's doing. He's not an amateur at this point, far past that. But his voice is the one thing that, you know, is not up to the level. And then the second thing is his voice kind of not being altered as much. I think there is kind of a use of auto-tune or voice modulation that he could have used in these songs that maybe would change how we feel. But him not doing that, I think, was a bold choice. You know, if it worked, in the comments, let us know. You guys tell us if you think it worked. But I think that was a bold choice because, right, the production doesn't really serve voice modulation in the same way because it's not as electronic.
Yeah.
But I do think that there was an avenue, maybe something there he could have done, changing up his voice that might have helped some of these songs.
Yeah, because you'll get to a song like Swan Song, which is near the end. I think it's the second or third last song. And again, it has like, the indie style production. You know, very simple guitars. I don't even think that song has drums, or if it does, it's later in the song. The synth, very simple. It's like a very simple synth stab.
Yeah.
And the singing is just like it's at this pace, like this pace that really reminds me of Domonic Fike, like early Domonic Fike.
Okay, I can see that.
Right? Where Domonic Fike was maybe him and a guitar, him and like a couple of very simple drums, and he has this earnestness to his voice that is missing from Young Lean's. Like Young Lean is missing. Like you could be, I keep saying this, I'm like, you can sing like Apathy and stuff like that, but like the actual emotion of that is not being conveyed properly, right? So that's how you get a song like Swan Song, where like it's like this halftime, like it's very expansive, and like there's lots of space for the vocals, but he just is not able to really put it together. Like he has the hook where it's like paint the town red, paint the town red, but the emotion and the melody is like I see the repetition, I see what I see how it fits in the song, but the emotion is not. It's not coming across, and it makes the song fall flat. Where I'm like, as you mentioned, it's like you could give these songs. I'm like, if you just gave this song to Domonic Fike, I feel like you just make this song but better.
and the thing is, Domonic Fike isn't even the craziest vocalist.
I know.
So the fact that it's like that would elevate the song as much as it would is kind of jarring. But two people I thought of, because I back in the day I had to I spent too much time almost explaining rock music to people, and I said, rock music is probably the number one genre you have voices that are not, traditional in terms of the way they sound. Maybe a little raspy here, a little muddy here. But a lot of these lead vocalists can really, really sing.
Yeah.
But they're just using their artistic direction to take it a certain way. And, when American Idol, Canadian Idol came on and you started seeing an influx of more rocky singers go far in the show, I would always point and say, see how Daughtry did so well? It's like his voice may sound so raspy, but he can really sing. Jacob Hogarth in Canadian Idol, lead singer of Heavily. It's like he's doing kind of the rock thing of not trying as much and trying to show some emotion in his voice, but doesn't actually have the vocal chops to make it work.
Yeah.
And I think, in a sense, I've realized now as a person who's not from this genre, they kind of think Young Lean sounds like everybody else. And I think now I hear it, I can see the difference, because when you're not accustomed to it, you're like, he's not really singing. Like, he's just screaming and kind of wailing. And then when you hear someone who can't really sing doing it, you're like, oh, this is what they think they're hearing.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think that the singing is not fully working for me. The production, on the other hand, I would say is okay. It's solid. I would say it's solid. I mean, for a song like Terminator Symphony, I really like. I like the vocals in the background. I like the distortion that's happening throughout the song.
It feels big.
Yeah, it feels expansive, feels big. It's very interesting. Like it just sounds very interesting. And there's a handful of songs that are like that, where I'm like, I like the production. I like where the song is going. And I think that he is definitely getting that loneliness, disillusioned, like this wandering through the darkness type of sound. It's working. Like I think that for Paranoid Paparazzi is another one of those songs.
Definitely.
Where, it feels like confused in a way. You feel like confused. You feel the emotion of being confused.
Yes.
That's the best way. Like you feel that emotion of like, I'm trying to figure out what's going on with my life. I'm wandering. That's being established, right? The synth work is really good. So I think that some of the songs, or I would say a fair amount of them, like production, solid.
I would say most of them.
Yeah.
My main thing is I do think there's kind of a lack of cohesiveness on this project.
Yeah.
Where it's like it is very much like you said, indie rock. I said a lot of soft rock on here, mixed with some grunge as well, and just kind of all over the place, in a sense. But there's two songs on here that I'm like, maybe this is where he should be. Now, Horses, I think is one of them where I'm like, this kind of production, I think he would do good on. It drags enough that I think that's what he's going for. Kind of that like slow, grungy sound.
Yeah.
And I feel like this is maybe the best fit for what his voice can do. So Horses is the one that stands out to me. And then I Am Dirt, I Am Dear Love. That one I thought was interesting. Like, this was probably one of the first ones when I said someone else would kill this.
Okay.
Like, this was the one where I was like, yeah, like if Last Dinner Party got a hold of this.
Oh.
You know what I mean? Of course, Leave It to the Woman to fix a man's song.
Facts.
But I'm like, he actually did well on this in terms of what I think he's capable of. The writing is simplistic, which I think he does well with. The melodies are catchy on here. And this is one where his voice is not strained. Like,
Right.
he kind of stays in the pocket without straining his voice, which I think he does a good job of. So I think that those two are songs, and I'm like, that's the kind of rock song I think he should stick to.
Yeah.
I think those two fit. And, Horse is a bit slower. He loves some slow on here.
I like Horses a lot.
And then I'm Your Dirt, I'm Your Love, a little bit faster.
Right.
Still not upbeat. And I think that's probably my one production faux pas here is he doesn't have anything that's like a real upbeat headbanger.
Yeah.
Like he doesn't have that anywhere in here. Like, after I listened to this, I had to kind of cleanse my palate. I listened to some of the Last Dinner Party. If you listen to the show,
We love that band.
love them very much. And I listened to Sinner. And I was like, they don't have a sinner on here. Like, there's none of that. And so I'm like, that's really what's missing. Again, I don't know if he actually has the voice for that.
Yeah.
But that's kind of what's missing to me is there isn't that dynamic song that you're like, okay, this is the one.
Yeah, I feel like he was trying to do that with Forever Young, where there is like that song where it has that really simple said that
Yeah, that like
but the drums on I wrote on in my notes, I'm like, this is like a joke level song to me. Like,
to me, this is the worst song on here.
it is.
It's the worst song on here.
Like that.
You know what it sounds
And the drums remind me. You know when Kanye said he couldn't figure out the drums for what was
Stronger?
No, not Stronger. He couldn't figure out the drums for Find My Love.
Mm-hmm.
So he just sent it to Drake anyways with the shitty drums. Like,
Yeah, that's what it sounds like. But you know what? This is why I didn't have this in my notes, because I understand this song. I don't like it. This is like a European pop song.
Is it? Maybe.
Yeah,
like the violin sound, the strings sound good.
Just kind of the tempo of it, the clap / snare. Like, you cannot see anyone in America making this song.
No.
You know what I mean? And it's like, there was a time, if you know me in high school, and I was like big into like UK and European music completely, and this is the kind of song that you would hear.
Yeah, because that's a single. That's the single for this album.
And that's why I didn't mention it, because I'm like, him being from Sweden is why this is even a single. Because
This has a music video.
we're saying it's a worst song on the album. It's like, this is a European pop song. And as much as, he's known for hip hop, popular in America, he still is a European man.
Yeah.
So that's why I didn't mention it, because I'm like, I don't like it, but I understand the intersection of him as a person and why this would be a single, why this would be on here. But to me, that's like the automatic skip of like, get this out of here completely.
Yeah. So I just wanted to bring that up because I was like, we were saying there's some good and some bad, and I'm like, this is the dregs, bro. This is like song number 3 on the record. Like, that's pretty early.
One last bit for production before we talk about what this means for his career. Might Not Be. This was where I was like, this is interesting.
Yeah.
I kind of like what he's doing with the synths. The like pseudo snare and the distortion I like. I think that is like a production move that some artists don't do enough, because it's always like, I don't want this to sound too different, too weird. But the simple move of having your snare just not be an actual snare drum, very simple, but it does a lot for a song in terms of making it sound a little bit different, and he does that here on Might Not Be. So this I actually like, but again, it drags.
Yeah.
And I think that is probably the problem with the album as a whole. And when I think about what this means for his career, again, young Lean fans, get in the comments, let me know if I'm wrong in what I'm saying, but I think the way this album drags is probably a hindrance to his career.
Yeah, and also there's like this it feels longer. This is the second album that we've done so far where I'm like, this shit feels longer than it actually is.
Yeah.
It's 34 minutes, and I'm like, I felt like I was listening to this for like an hour and a half when I was listening to it. When it comes to his career overall, I don't know. Like, this is, I know it's bad to say I don't know on a podcast, but it's really, he was so influential. It kind of reminds me of Chief Keef in a way where he's so influential early on in their career. Everything after that impact is kind of like gravy. Like Chief Keef is, I think they're the same age, actually.
Well, here's the thing. I think I look at Young Lean differently in terms of influence, because I don't look at him as influential. I look at him as being a part of what was happening. Like, he was a part of, that come up of that sound, but I don't know that he's one of the forefathers. He's maybe one of the most popular, of that sound. But I don't see him as kind of like directing sounds after him. If that makes any sense. He's 1
year younger than Chief Keef.
Crazy.
He's 28 and Chief Keef's 29.
I seen him, we're getting old. But I look at him as more like he was a part of the group at that time and was one of the most popular of that group of artists. So for his career, here's my thing is, this is also different from the sound that he's known for.
Yeah.
And I think when you're an artist and you do that for your career can mean, a few different things. Again, we talked about Lil Yachty doing that, at the top of last year, is one, you can get a whole new fan base of people who are like, oh my goodness, didn't know you had this in you. I'm into it now. As well, you can kind of alienate your own fan base who are like, I don't know how I feel about this. And I think, to me, I feel like the latter is what's going to happen, because for people like us who are familiar with this genre, I don't think he knocked it out of the park. Like, I don't think he did a good job of diving into this genre. And I think it is as far of a reach that his fans may be confused. Now, again, I don't think it's the album I'm about to name, but it reminds me a lot of 808s and Heartbreaks. For you guys who were alive at that time, remember that time, Love Lockdown was the first single. Now, one of the worst songs on the project, I would say, in retrospect.
Wow, that's a hot take.
I don't think so. One of the worst songs on the project in retrospect. But Love Lockdown as a single was so far from what Graduation was.
That's true. Okay.
That, people were like, Kanye, man, I'll follow you anywhere, but I don't know about this one. And so I think that this feels a lot like that, especially because the single being Forever Young, it's like Forever Young isn't even one of the better songs on this project. Kind of like Love Lockdown wasn't one of the better songs on this project. Now, later on, we got Heartless, Welcome to Heartbreak, amazing. And everyone said, okay, well, I'm back, you got us. But I don't see a Welcome to Heartbreak or an Amazing or a Heartless on here. So to me, I feel like this is probably hurtful to his career.
Yeah. Well, we'll see. I will also say Paranoid is probably. You think
Paranoid's the worst song? Wow. I know Paranoid is some people's favorite song. That's very interesting.
Yeah, but some people just like Mr. Hudson, you know what I'm saying?
That much?
But yeah, so I think it's, I don't know. I think that this hasn't bolstered anything, I would say, for Young Lean. And he is walking into an area where less and less people are familiar with him, and thus will not be as charitable with what he is trying to do as an artist, because this will just land on an indie rock, grunge rock fan, just like rock fan right now, and they're like, this is not up to snuff.
Well, right? I disagree with that. I think that
I don't think this is up to snuff in indie rock right now.
No, well, that I agree with, but will they even hear this?
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
That's kind of what I'm saying, is like, he's so known for hip hop, and he's still underground in a sense where, are people outside of his fans listening to this?
No,
like, realistically, probably not. And so it's like, will this even make it to the indie rock grunge fans for them to shit on it? Like, will it even make it there? It's the internet, 2025. Maybe it does, but my guess is they probably won't even hear it to shit on it, and only his fans will hear it and not like it.
Right. Okay. Well, I can see where you're coming from. Is it a no skips?
Absolutely.
Wait, how do you feel about the cover?
I like the cover. I actually like the cover. Cover might be the best part of the album. No, I'm playing. No, but I like the cover a lot. I think his signature on it is pretty cool. I like the kind of old photograph. So and I think the cover kind of feels like the album.
Yeah, it feeds into the aesthetic of the album. I
Mhm.
agree. That's why I like the cover. I think that the cover is really serious.
Yeah.
Really, really serious. And if you looked at his past covers, not that serious. The last one
No.
had like a frog on it.
No.
Okay, so it wasn't as super serious as this one. But yeah, I think that it fits the aesthetic of the album, the messaging of the album. I think it fits. The black and white, it looks super, super serious.
Mhm.
So I think it looks good. Genuinely, signature on it is also cool as well.
Are you getting this vinyl?
No, even though that it looks fantastic.
You're not gonna think about it a little bit?
No, no. You know, I have relatives of an array of colors in my family. So this would probably, it may fit within the photographs, but as just like musical acumen, I'm sorry, it's not worthy.
It's a no for me, dog.
Yeah, it's a no from me. Okay, and no skips. You're saying it's not a no skips. Which song are you skipping?
Oh my God, Forever Young, automatically, automatically.
Okay, me too. All right, the moment everybody has been waiting for. Adriel, what is your score for Jonatan by Young Lean?
This is a 4.5 out of 10 for me. I feel like the production I actually like, that there are things happening there, but his voice is just not up to par.
Mm-hmm.
I think lyrically there are some parts where you're like, a little iffy. And I think this is another album we talked about, our second one this year that we've reviewed like this, where it feels longer than it is. That's like the biggest faux pas you can have for an album.
That's really bad.
And then as well, it drags, where it's like, I am rushing to listen to anything else. Like, I am rushing to listen to anything else. So to me, it's like, it really suffers from, it's not an album you can play all the way through. And I think in 2025, like, that's a rarity in general. But when an album is so much in the opposite direction of like one or two songs, maybe, it's a struggle for me. So 4.5 out of 10. Where you at with this?
Well, my score for Jonatan by Young Lean is a 3.5. I feel like your 4.5 is a little bit charitable.
I wasn't gonna say it, man. Why you gotta call me out?
It was a little bit charitable, I would say. I think the lyrics, I did highlight some of the lyrics where I'm just like, it's just not working. And I think that if you dive even further into some of the lyrics, it's working even less. I was really bringing for like the references, just don't like the references. I understand what you're referencing. It doesn't make sense. And I think that the production is up and down. The downs are really fucking bad. And the ups are not that high. And his singing is it's just not working. It's just, he's not a good enough singer. Even though we know, the thing is, we know what he's trying to attempt. We see the vision, and your drawing of that vision is not very good. Like the singing is not, the emotion of Apathy is evident in the production, but the apathy is you're so apathetic that your voice is like drab. Like it's dragging along in the song. So it's a 3.5. It's not very good. And I think that your average listener will think that. I think your Young Lean fan will think that. And then I think like somebody who is like actually really versed, like they listen, like they just listen to indie. And they just listen to, or they listen to indie, or they listen to grunge, or they listen to, I don't even know, like any sort of guitar led instrumental style of music. They'd be like, yeah, this is not that good, bro. That's my score, 3.5 out of 10. I want to hear from the Young Lean fans, especially if you're from Sweden. I would love to hear what they have to say about this album, especially the single.
Yes.
Please notify me. I want to hear, I genuinely, genuinely, I want to hear your thoughts about the single, how that works, why that works.
How that works is hilarious.
Like, where is it hitting you that it just missed me?
Yeah.
I want to know that.
I want to know as well, like, get in the comments. Of course, we're on YouTube at Album Mode. We're on Instagram at Album Mode Pod, on TikTok.
The clock app.
Oof. At Album Mode Pod, and on Twitter, Twitter.com/X at Album Mode Pod. Let us know, please.
Please.
I want to know what you guys think. Are we tripping completely? Is this 808s or Heartbreaks Part 2 and we're just totally missing this?
Mm-hmm.
But listen, if you put our scores together, 8 out of 10.
Yeah, it's nice.
8 out of 10.
Now
so,
we're talking.
You can look at it that way. Appreciate you guys joining us. And until next time, know yourself, know your worth.
Later days.